like to thank the Multicultural Committee for inviting me to come to this wonderful campus. I have had the opportunity to spend most of the day here, and I have seen quite a bit. We began this morning with the 2- and 3-year-olds at the Child Development Center. Does any one of you ever feel just a little bit nervous when you stand in front of a group of strangers? Sometime when I stand in front of a group of people that I don't know, it makes me feel just a little bit nervous. But we can talk to our friends at any time without being nervous. So I would like for us to become friends, and then I can relax and I won't have to be nervous. Will you be my friend? Yes. Everybody raise your hand, spread your fingers wide, and repeat this after me. Ya Tahe. Very good. That is an intertribal friendship greeting that means hello, how are you? Your hand open, your fingers spread wide. It's showing that you don't have anything to hide. Your hand and your heart is open in friendship. You may not remember my name, and I promise you I won't remember yours, because my old mind do not retain things nearly as well as I would like for it to. But we will always be friends now that we have shared this greeting. And when you hear the word intertribal, that means that individuals or Indian people from all tribes will participate in that particular thing, whatever it might be, if it's an intertribal dance or for the friendship greeting or whatever it might be. As she told you, I am a member of the Lumbee Indian tribe of North Carolina, and we are the largest Indian tribe east of the Mississippi River, and not a lot of people are aware of that. Also, North Carolina has the largest American Indian population of any state east of the Mississippi. And there's 8 tribes in North Carolina. I don't know exactly how many are in South Carolina, but we do have quite a few American Indian tribes here. But North and South Carolina are similar somewhat in that each of us has what's called a federally recognized tribe, or one reservation, which is a set-aside parcel of land for these people to live on. In North Carolina, we have the Cherokee up in the mountains, and in South Carolina, of course, we have the Catawba, which is near where I live. I live in Charlotte. So we have a very rich American Indian presence in both the Carolinas, and American Indian people actually played a large part into our culture as it is today, although we really don't think too much about it. Because today we have so many modern conveniences. Anything that we need, there's always a place to go get it, except I haven't found a good tape yet to hold my pictures up. It keeps falling off. But that's what happens when you buy the cheap stuff. But we do have a very rich presence here, and it's still, people are practicing their culture. As Mrs. Cal told you, November is Indian Heritage Month across the nation, and all Indian people, or I would say many Indian people, are celebrating our history and our culture. And we use it as a time to help entertain and to educate the community as a whole about American Indian culture. Next week, we will have the largest American Indian gathering or festival that's held in either North or South Carolina. Probably even, I would say, well, in this part of the country anyway, the festival. There are some powwows that have more people, but this festival is held at the North Carolina Museum of History in Raleigh. This will be the 19th annual festival for them. And this is, it's done in collaboration with the Commission of Indian Affairs and all the 8 tribes in the state of North Carolina. But we invite people from all tribes to come and be a part of this celebration, if they want to dance with us, if they want to come and experience hands-on activities, bring a busload of children, because on Friday it is Education Day. And I have a few postcards if anyone would be interested in having one. You may have some relatives that live in the Raleigh area, or maybe you might just want to take a day trip and come to Raleigh to visit us. And if you will excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water because I'm on medication and it dries my mouth out too bad. I apologize. As I stated a minute ago, in North Carolina, we have 8 Indian tribes, and there's many in South Carolina as well. But if you travel across the United States, you will find that there are more than 500 different Indian tribes. And of these 500 tribes and the different regions, these people are as different from each other as you and I may be different, or as you may be different from the person sitting next to you. But with all of these differences, there are some things that we all have in common. Things that we share, no matter what our tribal background might be or what part of the country we're from. One of these things is respect for the natural world around us. Indian people have always known that we need to take care of our environment, and they, for the most part, have always tried to practice that. We also believe that all people are brother and sister to each other. We're all connected. Also, we believe that even the animals are our brothers. But in the early days, it was necessary for us to rely on the animals to give us almost everything that we needed to sustain our life. But to thank the animal and to show respect for him, we never destroyed or threw away any single part of the animal's body. We found a use for every single thing. So I would like to share some of these things with you, and it might trigger something. It might make you think about something that you yourself use, because many of these materials we are using today, as I had said a little bit ago. So let's talk about some of the different animal parts and what it might have been used for. Now, we know that they ate the meat, unless like some of you, we might be vegetarians today, we still do. But what about the animal's hide? Can anyone tell me what the hide might have been used for? Who has an idea? Anybody have an idea? Well, I'm sure that most of you already know that the hide was very versatile, and we're still using it today. But in this part of the country, we use the hide from the deer for making our clothes. In the plains area, they relied on the buffalo. The buffalo gave them almost everything they needed. And I think that if you really think about it, the teepee, which is their home that was made from the buffalo hides, could be where the ideal of a mobile home came from. Because in a sense, it was the very first mobile home. They would take it down, fold it, and carry it with them as they followed the herds across the plains. But in this area, as I said, we had deer were very plentiful, and still are today, actually. And where I live, we're next to a wildlife preserve, and my husband always complains about the deer getting into his garden. And one year I wasn't too happy because they came in and ate all the peas, and that's my favorite vegetable during the time that they are coming in. But the deer have to eat too, but we find now that we are seeing animals that we had in years gone by that we normally didn't see. But one reason that we are seeing so many animals now, and I've noticed in the Charlotte area, there's been several complaints of bear sightings in residential areas and neighborhoods where there's lots of children and animals, because there's so much building that they're pushing the animals out of their natural habitat, so they have nowhere to go. So they're showing up, a lot of them, in our backyard. I think someone has a question?
If you thought of the animals as their brothers and sisters, did they eat the meat or did they use it for something else?
The meat itself was used, but it was actually eaten, but we have to remember that in those days they did not have grocery stores. But today, they're still eating the meat because when we go to the grocery store or if we go to McDonald's for a burger, it's pretty much the same thing. It's just that it's processed differently than it was when the Indians used it. So that it was used that way. And as I said, they used every single part of the animal. Nothing was wasted or destroyed. So anyway, let's get back to it. The hide also, other than just making clothing and housing in that particular area, it was also used for making musical instruments. And one of the most modern or the most famous one that everyone knows about is the drum. Well, there's many cultures around the world that uses a drum. But one thing that makes ours a little bit different, this is a replica of what we call a powwow drum. A real powwow drum would probably be 5 or 6 times this big. They're large enough that you may find 15 to 20 men sitting around that drum at any given time making music on it. So this is just a replica that I use. I call these things my teaching tools. I use them in classrooms all across the state. But anyway, the drum also, other than making the music, it was a way for them to communicate with each other. And it was considered a sacred object. And to the Indian people, the sound that the drum makes represents the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And we teach our children from the very young age, when they first enter the dance arena, to listen to the sound of the drum and learn to identify the sounds that it makes. Because there are particular sounds that this drum will make when the dancer, it needs to acknowledge it. It is called honoring the drum. And there are these people who travel across the country from powwow to powwow, and many of the people from the West who doesn't have jobs, they make a living doing this. So they know the songs, they know when the honor beat sounds, so they learn at a very early age. And we have judges that will judge the dancers, and they look for how well their body interprets what the drum is saying. So the drum today is still a very important part of our culture. Even though we don't see these things every day, we tell our children that they have to walk in two worlds. We have to live in the mainstream, they have to go to school, we have to go to work, but we still try to hold on to our tribal or our cultural identity. So much of it has been lost that I think it's very precious, and I think that no matter who we are or what our culture might be, that it is important for us to acknowledge that, to hold on to it, and to reverence that as much as we possibly can. But the hide was also used for making other musical instruments, and one of the things was rawhide rattles. And the turtle was a special object. The young children earlier today used some of these rattles in some little dances and games that I taught them. But these rattles are actually made in the shape of a turtle, but it is made from rawhide. These are actually made from cowhide. These were made from the same hide that I made this drum from. So these are some of the things that we're still using. And as I said earlier, the turtle is a very special little creature, and we use him for many things. And we even have stories that tell us how Earth was built on Turtle's back. And there are those who call the Earth Turtle Island. And as I told the young children today, if we look on the shell of the turtle, we find there are 13 different shapes or 13 scales. And we say that there is a moon for each of these. Actually, there is a book by a great author of children's books, Joseph Burchak, who wrote a book called 13 Moons on Turtle's Back, and it's great for young children. But the turtle is a sacred little creature, but this particular rattle would have been used for ceremonial purposes, maybe for healing ceremonies and things of that nature. Another way, parts of the animal, oh, I didn't show you my turtle shell purse. This is my most popular item, and that's my little turtle shell purse. I made one for my granddaughter and one for my niece, so when they dance, they can put their change, a Kleenex or whatever they need to. And a lot of people use them nowadays for cell phone bags. And some of the men will carry them on their side. My son and his dog was at the Catawba River, which we live near that, and the dog dug up a little turtle, and it was just a turtle shell, just a tiny little one. And he brought it home, and I cleaned it up, and as a surprise for him for his birthday, I made him a medicine bag out of the little turtle shell that he found at the river. Now he wears that around his neck, so it became his medicine bag. And the medicine bag usually carries things that is pretty special, or even a particular type of medicine for that particular person, but whatever is in there is personal to the individual. I want to show you, though, my very favorite musical instrument, and when I will move on to something else. This is my very favorite musical instrument. I love these things. They're worn by the men and boys, usually tied around the leg, just below the knee or around the ankle. And when they dance, it makes the music. The women and girls can put them on a stick or a piece of leather, and they make music that way. And these things actually came from an animal. Anybody have an idea?
Bear's claws?
No, but that's a very good guess. Anybody else have an idea? We call them deer toes. It is actually the deer's toenails. That's what these are. And this one, if you look at this is one of my favorite rattles. The tiny little ones here on the end, they're also from a deer. This is from what is known as a dew toe. If we have any hunters in here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the animals on the back of their leg, just above their foot, they have a little toe. And on the deer, they have the toe, and it's called a dew toe. So these are the nails from the dew toes from the animal, from that particular deer. So we ate the meat, used the hides for making clothing, and bags and purses. And the first time I made a purse and went to a powwow many years ago, I think I might have started a trend, because ladies did not traditionally carry a handbag. But ladies, let's face it, we have to have our stuff, don't we? So if we didn't have a handbag, how do you suppose we carried these things? Well, they were very creative and very inventive. So on their back was one way, and they were the very first to wear or to invent backpacks in this country. They carried their babies on their back. But the way they carried the other things that they needed, small things, was in little pouches or little bags attached to a belt. And a lady may wear 5 or 6 different little pouches on her belt. Each of them would be a different shape and size and would have its own distinct purpose or reason. So everything had a job, because there was so much work to be done. They couldn't make things just because they wanted to make it. They had to make things with purpose or that fulfilled a need. And you could always find her with a knife, because the men hunted and the women would usually prepare the food and clean the hides and all this. In other words, we did the dirty work. So she always carried a knife. So let me leave that and move on to something else after I pick up the picture that fell. The animal's bone. Anybody have an idea what some of the bone could be used for?
Tools?
Tools is a very good thing. Yes, tools is one of the things that the bone was made for. This is actually an old knife that was carved from bone, and an old scraping tool. Before I could make a dress or a drum or anything out of that hide, it had to be cleaned. And these were some of the most primitive tools that would have been used. And our people were near the ocean, so we also used lots of seashells. As you can see on this dress that I made, I call this my primitive dress, and I decorated it with seashells because we were near the ocean and the people from this area, so we use seashells for a lot of things. So tools made from bone and seashells and sharp rocks. And this was the very favorite stone, and all of you adults, I'm sure you know why, but the thing is, the Indians thought, when they first discovered this rock, they thought this rock was magic. And the reason they thought it was magic was because it could start a fire. Just imagine, if you've never seen fire and all other than when you rub two sticks together, and that is a lot of work. I have done it with the friction, but it's a lot of work. But when you discover something that you can just hit the two rocks together and it makes a spark, it makes life a whole lot easier. It's like we do today, and the technology is what's taken over now, but one step will move up and then something else is dropped off. So this was just another step for them, making it easier for them to make a fire instead of rubbing the sticks together. And so the bone was also, and still is today, being used. Actually, jewelry is one of the biggest things that the bone is used for today, because we don't have any need for tools made from bone. And like I said before, when we make these things, we didn't make them just to look at. It was because we needed them. So today, the long white beads on here are bone. Although they're not white anymore, they're starting to turn yellow. When they are new and fresh, they are white. But after you wear them a while or use it for a while, they start to turn yellow. And after they get old enough, they will turn brown. And I actually made this to wear with a white buckskin dress. And after it started to turn yellow, it really clashed with my white buckskin. So I had to make another one. Had the same problem. So to save myself a lot of time and trouble, I did something that I shouldn't have done. I cheated. I took some of these beads, we call the long beads hair pipe. I dyed them red because I have red beads on my dress. So if I dyed them red, I wouldn't have to be concerned about them turning yellow anymore and having to change that. So that saved me a lot of trouble. Now, I have something here that was made from bone that I would say every single person in this room has eaten this. Almost everybody thoroughly enjoy it, and I would say you have eaten this recently. Anybody want to guess what it might be?
Cereal?
No, we're looking for something with bone. No, I heard chicken. No, it's not chicken. I would give you a clue. You might eat it on Friday. Fish. It is fish bone. And this is something that you can do yourself if you're feeling energetic and you have lots of time with nothing else to do. Go to the fish market, or better yet, go to the Loma River and go fishing and catch your very own fish. You clean it the best you can. You take the sharp rib bones off where you won't get stuck with it. Yes, it is a dirty, smelly old job, but all you have to do is use a little soap and water, wash your hands, and then you are ready to go. But you just place it somewhere in the sun to dry out where animals can't get to it. And once it's done, you already have a hole in the center where the bone marrow was. All you have to do is string it up. And with this one, I dyed some pink and added it to the white. And you could add other beads to it. This one, I added wooden beads, and wood is another thing that they use for many, many things. So I took the fish bone and the wooden beads and made me a very primitive necklace from that. So we still are using a lot of the same materials. We're using it in just a little different way. Oh, I wanted to show you, this is another piece of jewelry. A lot of young people like this particular piece. I've had several young school teachers special order these because they fell in love with them. And some want them with the white bone, and some want them with the dark. But the thing is, these black beads on here, the long ones, are from a buffalo's horn. And they're not that easy to come by. So we're still, like I said, using these. The white beads are made from bone, and the black ones are from buffalo's horn. Okay, let's move on now to something else. What else is left? What about the animal's hair? What could the hair be used for? Now, we know that today we use wool. If we have a wool sweater, a wool blanket, or a jacket, that was the hair or the fur from an animal, usually from a sheep. Well, Indian people also, years ago, they have always used the animal's hide, their fur. Today, if someone wears a fur coat, they want to leave the fur on the outside so everybody can see that they have a fur coat. Well, the Indian people had to be concerned with comfort. So when it was cold, they would make their clothing with the fur on the inside to make it warmer. And usually, on a buffalo hide or an animal hide, this side is what we call the flesh side. Once this hide has to go through a process before you can make clothing from it. It takes a lot of work to get it in this position, but I don't think anyone in here is old enough to have heard this expression. But where I grew up, when I was a child, the adults would say to us, "Kid, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to tan your hide." Well, no one wanted their hide to be tanned because they knew that was really rough work. And I think that term came from something that the Indians did to the hides. Because before we could make clothing or drum, well, no, they didn't have to be tanned for the drum, but for clothing or blankets or something of that order, they had to tan the animal's hide. Today, we have huge plants that tan the cow hides. After all the meat has been processed and gone to the grocery stores, the hides are sold to companies called tanneries. They tan these animals' hides, and then they turn around and sell them to the companies that make shoes, upholstery, clothing, purses, these kinds of things. But they use chemicals today to tan the hides. But with all the chemicals and the modern technology we have today, nothing has proven to work as well as something the Indians have been using for hundreds of years. And they used a part of the animal to tan his hide. And a person who works with the hides or knows that can feel a hide. And they know, we call it Indian, if it was Indian tanned. And if someone walks in with a new dress or a new bag, that it was made from in the old traditional way, I can smell it. And I know that it was hand tanned. But as I said, the Indians use something, and there's a few people who still do, but it is a dirty job. If there is anyone in here who has ever been a Boy Scout, you might know what they use for tanning the hide. Does anybody have an idea? You look like you might have been a Boy Scout sometime. Okay. They use the animal's brain to tan his hide. And the amazing thing is, every animal, no matter how large or how small, his brain is just large enough to tan his own hide. Well, I think that's pretty fascinating. And how did they discover that? Had to be scientific research, although they didn't call it that at the time, but I think that it was pretty good. But at any rate, they would sometimes take the hair off, weave it into yarn, then make sashes and rugs and blankets and clothing. But today we have all these places where we can go and purchase whatever we need that's made from wool. We don't have to do all of that hard work. But there are still some things that we use that I have not found in any store that I have been in. One of these things is this. This is a headdress, actually, and it's worn only by the men and boys. And usually, if I have children, I'll ask one of the boys to come up and model for me. But usually it's worn on the top of the head with an eagle feather in the top. And the way the eagle feather was worn, if you will look, you will see there's a hole in the top. Traditionally, they would have made a plait or a braid on top of their head and pull it through this hole. And then with a stick that they called a scalp lock, that stick would go through it and hold it in place. But they would also attach an eagle feather. But this is a fact that everyone doesn't know, and that is that every eagle feather that an Indian person wore or owned had to be earned. A lot of people have the idea that we like feathers, so we'll just go out and pluck the feathers from whatever we find. But the traditional person would not want an eagle feather unless in some way it was presented to him or unless he had earned it in some way. And I taught my children, and I am teaching my grandchildren, that the highest honor that one person can pay to another in traditional Indian culture is to give someone the gift of an eagle feather. Because you only give a person an eagle feather in which you hold very high esteem, and that person has done something that is very impressive to you, or say, I think it might be equivalent to our Congressional Medal of Honor. But some of the young people today that go around to the powwows and dance, they have forgotten or never known the old traditional ways. Because they want as many feathers as they can get, they think the more feathers they have, the better their regalia will look. And the regalia is what we call our clothing. We never refer to it as a costume. Regalia is a suit of honor, so we always refer to our clothing that way. But traditional people would not, as I said, want an eagle feather unless he had done something to where he earned that. But this thing is made from the hair of two different animals. I want somebody to tell me what animals it came from. You tell me.
Deer?
Very good. The white hair on the bottom is from a deer's tail, from a white-tailed buck. What about the long dark hair? Anybody have an idea about that? You tell me.
Buffalo?
No, but that's a very good guess. Actually, buffalo's hair is not long and straight. It's very short and curly, really tight.
Bear?
No, but that's also a good guess. But it's actually, well, this is kind of hard for young people. It's actually from a porcupine. Now, this thing is a headdress, but it has a name. I have no idea where the name came from, and in my opinion, it doesn't fit. But they call this thing a roach, usually referred to as a porky roach or a porcupine roach. So if you happen to be at a festival sometime and you hear one of the guys say, well, it's time to dance, I need to get my roach, you know he doesn't have a little pet bug crawling along someplace. So this is what he's talking about. Now, in this basket here, I have something else that's from a porcupine. And if you stick your finger with this little thing, my grandson says with one of these bad boys, you're going to remember it for some time because it's very painful. It's got a short black tip on it. But the thing is, these are very, very soft, very lightweight, and they could not be used for tools or weapons. But the traditional Indian people many years ago, this is almost a dying art, but they would clip the sharp ends off of these porcupine quills, dye them into pretty colors, and they would weave the most beautiful baskets you have ever seen. They also decorated their clothing with the porcupine quills long before the Europeans came and brought the pretty glass beads that we have today. This is a belt buckle that is covered with porcupine quills. I have a couple of baskets at home that is covered with the quills. I also have a ceremonial pipe that the stem is done in the porcupine quills. The gold or yellow and the purple design in there is the quills. But they use this for decorating their clothing. But when the Europeans came to this country and brought the pretty glass beads that we see today, it didn't take them long to realize that they could make the same designs using these new things that the new people had brought. So actually the beads that the Europeans brought with them replaced the porcupine quills, because it is so much easier to weave the beads than it is to weave the porcupine quills. And I actually teach bead weaving classes to children in the 2nd grade. So there's some forms of the beadwork that is very simple. This is one of the pieces that I like, but this is a special piece. I call this my fat belt. The reason I call it my fat belt is because it stretches. So this is another one of these modern things. We're using elastic or the stretchy string for a lot of things. So why not make a belt out of the stretchy string using the little beads? But I wanted to show you something else. So I left that in, but I want to come back to this. If you look, this is the porcupine quill that I had a minute ago. But look, this is also a porcupine quill. Those of you on the back will probably not be able to see the one in my right hand. The difference in these quills is this quill is from one of our porcupines, from a North American porcupine. This one is from an African porcupine. And I find that there's a lot of similarities between African artwork and Indian artwork. So when I found these, I thought it would be nice to incorporate some of them into our regalia. So I traded with the man. I got some of these and gave my grandson one. This is my grandson. He's all grown up now. He was a little tyke when this was made. But I wanted to show you what it looked like. This picture right here has this young man on it, and you can see the stick on the top of his roach. On one end there's beads with a piece of leather hanging down with a few beads on it and a feather. Well, now when my grandson dances, he wears the African porcupine quill in his roach instead of wearing what's called a scalp lock, which is made from the red heart cedar. That is one of our sacred plants, and it is also a healing plant. So we use that for a lot, but the African porcupine quill was one of the things that was used. Oh.